and we really have not had that much rain in this area. A couple weeks ago on Sunday, I think that was the 2nd of May or maybe the 3rd. That was when some areas up by Clare had 2.5, 3 inches. Barnum had a couple inches. Fort Dodge had 1.5 inches or so. But you got east and south of Fort Dodge, just a couple, 3-5 miles, and there was almost no rain, 1/4 inch or in that range. So, we this time of the year, we're not using, as farmers, the crops are not using much moisture, but the soils are not saturated by all means in this part of the state. Eastern Iowa has been getting more rains, and a lot of us hear the Des Moines stations and what's going on in Ames, Des Moines, and South. But if you look at the Drought Monitor Index, as farmers, we follow the weather pretty closely, follow the markets based on weather. The Drought Monitor Index is more severe now than in 1988 and 2012. And those were 2 pretty bad drought years. Now, I don't think we're set up for drought. We're not going to surely be talking that right now because there's parts of Nebraska that have gotten beneficial rains. Northern Kansas had some flooding that we've seen on TV. Indiana's had some too much rain in some areas, but I guess you say then Iowa, we're setting just right.
All right. Yeah, I just got a text. You heard my phone go off.
Yeah.
From a listener who says, Mike, I don't think your mic is on.
Oh.
If you remember, we were trying to put a caller on just before we went on air, and I have to take my mic off to do that. Well, I forgot, and then I didn't put it back on.
Well, you're not going to rewind, so just start the show over again.
Here we go.
Talk about this cattle farmer that's in here today.
That's right. Yeah, this is Greg Hora. He's president of the Webster County Pork Producers, past president of the Iowa Pork Producers, and this portion of the program is being brought to you by the Webster County Pork Producers. Okay, so now we can talk about the World Pork Expo coming up in Des Moines in June.
Yes.
And that's always an event.
Yes, it is. And,
that's a big deal for pork producers and everybody in Iowa.
Well, it really is. There's, as farmers, there's fewer and fewer people that raise livestock. There's fewer and fewer farmers. The average age is about 58 years of age of farmers. Well, I'm a couple years above that. So
that means you're 60?
There you go.
Just a youngster, Greg.
There you go. That's right. But, 2 years ago, the World Pork Expo at the Des Moines State Fairgrounds, or Iowa State Fairgrounds in Des Moines, was canceled 2 years ago because of the pig disease, African swine fever. Well, last year it was canceled because of people disease, the COVID pandemic. So, yes, we're looking forward to, as Iowa pork producers, the National Pork Producer Council actually is the host of this event, which is not just for Iowa, but it's for the entire U.S. and world people that are involved in pork production. Thus, It's called the World Pork Expo.
You've been a great source of pork information for me over the many, many years. But I've talked with people from Canada who are in the pork associations in that country.
Yes.
And gosh, there's just, if you start digging into international agriculture, I'll tell you, it's a fascinating business.
It really is. And, here I'll talk a little bit about a couple of those contacts and some of the ongoing relationships and why it's important. But we should also say we're in the 3rd week of May here, and May is beef month. And some of your former guests, for example, Dean Black, represents the beef. I know it. He's a busy man, and he and I actually, we crossed paths last week for the first time in a long time. And May is beef month. And in one of the things in Iowa, I think Iowa places 5th or 6th in the nation as far as number of cattle inventory in the country. But what Iowa takes great pride in the Iowa Cattlemen's Association, and you've had some of their staff on this station before that I've lined up or that Dean has lined up to visit with you. So what they take great pride in is how many individual family farmers that are cattle farmers that we have in Iowa. We're blessed in Iowa with a diverse type of topography, pasture ground, rolling ground. And quite honestly, a lot of that rolling ground is most suitable for cattle and beef production,
Right.
cow-calf operations. So there's a lot to celebrate here in Iowa with agriculture. And I know we talk about a lot of things with the pork industry, but the cattle producing people in this state, the harvest facilities, the processing facilities are very critical to the economic well-being of rural Iowa. And, as I mentioned that, it was about a month ago that the Tama PAC, or I guess they call it Iowa PAC, over there in Tama, they said they were going to double their harvest facility capabilities. And they've had three different owners of that over the last 10, 15, 20 years that they've had that up in operation. But they take great pride in the type of quality of animals that they bring in there. And obviously, anytime we talk about any type of food production, we also talk about the end users, the consumers, the retailers that utilize that product. And that's a real gem for Iowa agriculture. It's not the largest by all means. It's not one of the top four packers, which the beef industry is very consolidated with, I believe, four of the packers control about 80% of the harvest facilities. But the Tama facility is pretty darn critical to Iowa agriculture and to the cattlemen.
I would just like to make an observation. We have to do something about this monopoly that's going on in our country. My God, there's almost no room for the smaller business person. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier. In the 90s and early 2000s, a lot of guys who hadn't been pork producers became pork producers because the price of grain was where it needed to be, or they had a son that wanted to join the family operation.
Yep.
So they had to have more income. So they built a lot of barns.
Yeah.
We have a lot now, and it sounds like nobody's backing off, that they're still building barns. So is pork production then is still in high demand, and is the price of pork good, or where are we at on that?
Well, that's a good question. And I'll answer your last question first. And yes, the price of pork is really high right now. We've hit some highs in the pork market that we have not seen since back in 2012, 2013. Okay. And 2014, there was a disease that came through. And so we had some herd liquidations and we had high grain prices. And so those type of things somewhat are occurring again now. But to one of your earlier points is, in the United States, we did not start exporting pork until the early 90s. The United States was a pork importer up until about 1993, 94.
Pork from Poland.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly right. European community was, they still provide a lot of pork worldwide, and a competitor of ours also. But, we started growing a pork industry in the United States because we had people that enjoyed the product.
Sure.
56, 58 pounds per person per year is what we are at in the pork consumption. As I've talked about China before, China is around 80 pounds per person pork consumption. And of course, they have a lot more people, but I'm just talking about per person. And so we also had the advent following the 80s agriculture crisis, where we had high inflation, we had low prices, we had bank debt, we had personal debt, we had a lot of, we had embargoes that were occurring in the early 80s. So we started replacing labor with capital, and capital was investments of money to new technologies, easier ways of raising pigs than what my grandfather did in the 60s or early 70s, or in the 40s and 50s. And so, from Kossuth County, where you grow up and you talk about fondly, how many individual family farms were on each section?
Oh, yeah.
And how many of those actually had livestock?
All of them.
You bet. That's exactly right.
They didn't have big amounts. They weren't big, but they raised chickens, they raised hogs, some had cattle. Yeah.
And, our society continues to change. And as, we always talk about, at 1900 or 120 years ago, 90% of the population grew food.
Right.
Well, today, as we, in the agriculture, what we call the barnyard of all the agriculture organizations, we talk about, there's only about 2% of the people in the United States that are actually in food production.
Well, there's a number of reasons for that.
Very much so.
I mean, the
so,
equipment got huge. I
yeah.
see the combines you guys are driving out there. My
Yep.
God, corn planters.
yeah, we have a lot of those technologies. And of course, not just with the iron, but with the food production, which, as your listeners have heard me talk about before, one of the things we take great pride in the United States is having the least cost food in the world. And only about 11% of our total family disposable income goes towards purchasing food.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, a lot of that is other aspects of food costs, or transportation and packaging and retailing and marketing and all those type of things. But that's a cost of food.
Sure.
So anyway, but answering your question, no, there is a slowdown right now of building hog barns. Number one, everybody knows what the price of lumber has done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's tripled. Anybody looking at building a garage or adding on to their home, or contractors all know this, what the price of lumber has done for a number of reasons. But when you start talking about, those impacts in the pork industry, there is not as much construction happening right now as has happened in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm still, I've probably told you this before, probably 10 times, but I still miss a nice juicy pork chop. They don't, what you mentioned, life changes, the culture changes. It certainly does. When there became a demand for lean pork. I mean, doctors were reporting that the fat in some meats, pork and beef, was bad for your heart. Well, I've been eating lean pork for a long time now, and I still got a heart problem. So I might as well go back to eating some fatty.
Well, maybe it had something to do with else you did back in the 70s and 80s and 90s.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do know. And that's why I could speak on behalf of National Pork Board, where we have medical doctors that are on staff and nutrition doctors that are on staff at National Pork Board, so that we look at those commonalities that we're dealing with human health on, with the types of food that we're growing and how we're preparing it, and ultimately how we serve it and people consume it. And that's a very dynamic area that we have worked with in the pork industry. And I know the other meats industries or dairy. We talk about dairy, and our current Secretary of Agriculture at USDA is Tom Vilsack, our former governor. He worked in the dairy industry after he was done with the Obama administration, U.S. Dairy Export Federation, I believe it was called. And so those types of things, we bring in some very smart people into agriculture. And of course, when you're dealing with trying to export, as we hit a record level last year of 36% of our pork that we raised was exported. And there's a volume amount and there's a value amount that we take pride in. And as I mentioned that, I should throw another one out to the beef producers or to your listeners out there, that this being May is Beef Month, the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Dan Holmstrom, who grew up over by Cherokee, actually, he has just made the announcement that the first quarter of the year hit some record beef export sales. And actually last month had $800 million worth of export sales. So it's a huge number. And when you start talking about getting close to $1 billion in a month or in a couple months time, that's a big deal. And that was all into China. So the other thing about some of that deals with it, the exports and what we have, it still is very affordable to U.S. consumers. And you asked me earlier in this segment about the price of pork, and yes, it's gone higher, as I said, for a number of reasons. But
I should have asked that question a little bit differently. Is it profitable? I mean, despite the pork prices going higher, is it profitable to the individual pork producer?
Well, right now, the answer is yes.
All right.
6 months ago and 1 year ago, there were some devastating losses. And a lot of agriculture producers received some of the COVID pandemic relief funds. Pork receives a little bit. But if your listeners think back to 1 year ago right now, we were still having about 20% of the packing plants in the United States were not in operation. They couldn't get enough workers. The plants were backed up. And we're just trying to ramp back up with that harvest facilities in the month of June a year ago. So they didn't have to pay anything more, and price of pork dropped dramatically to the farmer.
Okay.
And as I mentioned last week, and I probably put a bad omen out there, but I'm not a superstitious guy. You asked me last week how the price of grain was doing.
Yes.
Well, I mentioned about some market tops and record prices last Wednesday. Well, on Thursday and Friday, it dropped considerably.
Why?
And it's continued to drop here this week. So from when I was on 1 week ago today, price of corn has dropped about $1 a bushel.
Whoa.
Yeah. So pretty significant, and won't get into the specific numbers, but a week ago, we had a USDA report out, the WASDE report, World Ag Stocks Demand. And so there was some market moving numbers there, and the price of soybeans have dropped about $1.50 in the past week. And so there's a lot of different reasons going on there, but still there's some profitable levels right now. And we do need to grow the crop, though. That's what's important.
That's what's important. All right. This portion of the program brought to you by the Webster County Pork Producers. Greg Hora is our guest, and we're coming back.
Your news, your town, your station. KVFD News when it breaks.
With your KVFD News update, I'm Rob Jones. Opening arguments began this morning in the
having teams and participating on that. And so it's good to continue those and get some new people involved.
Yes, it is. Absolutely, it is. So yeah, we're not asking for anything wild or crazy. We're just asking for a few things.
There you go.
Yep. Come on, Jesus.
Well, I know out at the county fairgrounds, you should get somebody from out there involved too with one of your segments, because they're putting up some new grandstand and track areas, and they're hoping to have different diverse types of entertainment out there, not just of participants in some of those races that they're going to have, but also, bringing families out and seeing different types of entertainment. Because if you think back, and you mentioned to me earlier in the segment as we were walking down the hallway about Larry Lighting.
Yes.
And Larry Lighting, of course, about 20 years ago was a real push behind getting the OHV park, or the off-road vehicles,
Okay.
either motorcycles or four-wheelers, or now they have the side-by-sides that you see at the racing shops and the motorcycle shops. Really good entertainment. It gets people outside, and we have a huge facility on the east side of Fort Dodge that I know people from all across the Midwest come to. And it's kind of tucked away back in the trees and have good tracks, but it's also getting more people involved in outdoor activities.
By God, if we got our own broadband, that would be terrific, wouldn't it? We may be the perfect town. We might be the perfect town.
That's a whole nother subject. We're
not talking about it during your time.
Yeah, I know. I hear some things get bantered around about that, and that's like with anything with technologies. There's always some changes and that we have to look at, and whatever that task force is putting together, and have people evaluate and review.
I'm ready to go.
Yep. We'll see what it is.
If I have a bad day with that sort of service, it's going to bleed through here on the air. I was without internet service this morning. I was, I don't know, a couple hours, 3 hours maybe. But it occurred to me, my God, how much I depend on the internet now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know what the hell it was really 25 years ago. I don't think.
Well, that's why there's a fleet of service and repair guys for
There
any
is.
type of those businesses. And
Yeah.
it's not bulletproof. There's going to
Yeah.
be, I think, we lost service up in our part of the north side of town a couple weeks ago. Somebody hit a line, cut a line. And
That'll
of course
do
that
it.
can happen. And whatever the circumstances were, I don't know. But those types of things can happen when you have a lot of activity going on, especially with underground utilities.
Just as we finish, we need to cover a few legal things. Social activists, a lot of times from the West Coast or around the country, have come to our state and tried to make a big. They seem to be targeting Iowa Select, but pork producers in general, and they are pushing certain legislation that is harmful to the pork industry, frankly, and it's harmful to the economy of Iowa. Can you? I know that Iowa Select was involved with somebody who wouldn't stop trespassing on their property. This person insisted on trespassing. So can you tell us where any of that legislation is, or what kind of activities going on there?
Well, we've had some legislation, to your point, at the Iowa legislature over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
One of those pieces of legislation that was signed is now currently in litigation, whether or not it's legal that you can give farmers or give the pig ownership group this type of protection. And basically it is about trespassing and having things done improperly by those who want to show either a person or a business aspects in a bad light.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's been continued efforts on that to give some protections, but it's no different than what has occurred with trying to do showing off maybe your farm with a farm display or farm tours. All it takes is 1 or 2 lawsuits, and then it's like, well, we're not going to do farm tours anymore because you can't get liability coverage. And
You can't.
well, in some cases, farm tours like schools and those things that used to come out, because of some lawsuits, those things changed dramatically.
That's terrible.
But back to the point about agriculture, we are trying to have some protections in there, because if you're not doing anything wrong, but somebody may videotape or coerce a coworker to do something and then have underlying motives. And that's where some of these things that you bring up to your listeners, that it is important to have the protections. And we as farmers, especially pig farmers, we have a lot of training not just within our own farms, but for the industry.
Mhm.
One of those aspects is called secure pork supply. And so right now on my hog barn doors, I have padlocks on them.
Okay.
Every day I have to unlock a padlock to walk in the door
Right.
to go take care of my pigs. And that's because the pig ownership group that I work with, we talk about a secure pork supply. And that's just one of the provisions that we implement on our farms.
Sure. Gosh, that's too bad they stopped the farm tours. This was many, many years ago, but and I don't know who arranged it. The pork producers at the time probably did, but this was many years ago. A group of children from Newark, New Jersey, were going to tour the heartland so they could see where their food came from.
Yep.
Now these are city kids. A lot of them lived in projects and things.
Yes.
Well, there was pictures in the Des Moines Register or Pravda, whatever you prefer, and video on the television news that the little kids were just astounding. And one farmer took them into his newborn facility, and there were all these little squealing little piglets running around in there. And the farmer would take a couple out and let the kids hold them, and they just thought that was the greatest thing in the United States of America. They were thrilled. They had never seen anything like the farm before.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, it was a huge educational experience. I remember the teacher was along. She was a woman in her 30s, and she just went, "I'm not going in there. Those pigs are ugly." But
well, real quick to that point, I took some pigs in with another farmer, Doug Adams, from up in Humboldt County, who's been on your show before. We went to the Duncombe Elementary School 3 weeks ago, and great hit with the kids. See what Iowa agriculture is about.
Greg Hora, thank you very much. This portion of the program brought to you by the Webster County Pork Producers. It's 3:00. Thanks for listening.
This is Gary Rima, the voice of the UNI Panthers.
On Twitter at JMike1400.
That's right. You can go to those places, and please do. And we gladly welcome back to the program our friend Sam Clovis. Sam, how are you today?
Doing great. How about you?
Well, I'm doing just fine. You know, anytime it's 75 degrees, Sam, I'm all right.
Well, for me, every day I put my feet on the floor is a victory, so I don't care what the weather is.
By golly, you got a point there, and we should never forget that. We should. I used to know a guy that would say, "I'm grateful every time I get up in the morning." Well, pretty much as you said, I'm grateful every time my feet hit the floor in the morning, because there's going to be a day when that doesn't happen, and that's the truth, But I'm glad that we're both here. Anyway,
I've had those days already, Mike.
Yes. Sam, you spent some time in Washington. You've been around politics a long time.
Right.
You have an impressive resume. And if I ask Sam Clovis to give his entire resume, I mean, I just then sign off the radio station, because he has an impressive and lengthy resume. But I do not get how the Democrats in Washington, D.C. want to form yet another investigating committee around the events of January 6th. Now, personally, those guys at January 6th didn't do the right thing, but a threat to our democracy? No.
Nope.
I mean, they were just a bunch of dudes, and they, unlike Antifa, they didn't mask up, and they didn't do a lot of dirty things that Antifa does. And by the way, Antifa targeted federal buildings all over the country for destruction, repeated destruction over months and months and months. And there's not one of those people who are sitting in jail for it. But these guys are looking at years in jail, and they've already been in jail for 3 months or 4 months.
Yeah, in solitary confinement. They're like political prisoners. I have a friend of mine who's very close to this. An attorney, very, very plugged into Washington, and he understands and knows what's going on. And he says these people are being held like political prisoners. They are not being held and have not been given due process.
No,
and that is the one of the issues that we have inside the District of Columbia is because of the nature of the district. It is quite possible for this to happen. And then you get to the invasions of various people that are on the periphery of this, and literally 2 or 3 people removed. And you have them with 6 o'clock raids from the FBI coming in and stealing computers and files, and it is a witch hunt, and I think that if it was taken on its surface, it ought to be dealt with that way. But we have a double standard in Washington, Mike, as you know, and that's why we don't see the prosecution of Antifa and BLM. Only do you see what is politically expedient for the Democrats.
Well, let's not forget Roger Stone. Roger Stone is a Republican Party trickster. He's quite the character, a real eccentric. He has a tattoo of Richard Nixon on his back. I mean, that's just who the guy is. The FBI raided his house at 6 a.m. No need for that. The man's in his late 60s. Yep. He's not going anywhere. But the real deal is, and catch this, the FBI showed up with a camera crew from CNN.
Exactly.
What is a camera crew with CNN doing at an FBI raid at 6 a.m?
Well, the same thing happened to Paul Manafort, and Paul Manafort probably is getting what is his just dues because of the tax evasion and all of the other things that went on with him. But the idea is that they did show up with camera crews, and they did show up with satellite trucks. And that, to me, it just tells me the total politicalization of these events.
Yeah,
and
camera crews at an FBI raid. Yeah,
at an FBI raid. It's 29 agents to go in at 6 a.m. to go in and roust a 69-year-old man and his family. I mean, that that to me it's uncalled for. And the other side of it is, I will tell you, the way the FBI treated me was with the utmost respect and with the utmost consideration. And I was, of course, I didn't knock on wood. I didn't have my home invaded or any of that. But they certainly dragged me through a knothole. But it was done with great consideration. I have a lot of stories I could tell you, but I won't eat up the time here with that. But it is interesting that the very top of these large organizations like the CIA, the FBI, and the national security apparatus, the Department of Defense, DHS, are so corrupt and so embedded and so corrupt. And that, to me, when you take a look at the largest and are supposedly the best police force in the world, that is our FBI, and how corrupt it is at the top, it is sickening to me as an American.
Yes, it is corrupt, and Trump was right about that. I mean, can you imagine those two people? Here they are, or the man was married, and they're having an affair. And don't worry, the man sends an email to his girlfriend on the side. We're going to take Trump down, or where's that effect? You know the situation I'm referring to.
Sure do.
Yeah. What was the man's name again? It was Strzok. Yeah.
Peter Strzok.
What an arrogant, corrupt man he is. And his girlfriend then went on to file a lawsuit for something. Well, now, I had no idea what the lawsuit was about. It was something like, my feelings are hurt, which is a right big surprise to me. Feelings are hurt.
Take a look at who his bosses were, then you go around to where you have James Comey and on down. I mean, and then you have the Deputy Attorney General who was as corrupt as all of them. I mean, because he's the guy that coaxed the Sessions to recuse himself, to appoint Mueller as a special investigator, and here's the dirty little secret about the Mueller investigation. They knew 6 weeks into that investigation exactly where everything was. They had all the emails, they had all the evidence, they knew everything. And it took them 2 years to come to the same conclusion that they could have had at 6 weeks into it. And that, to me, again, was done to drag out and to embarrass the president of the United States.
Well, of course it is. That's why they're dragging out this January 6th thing. They know for sure, Sam, that the only reason Joe Biden was elected president, and they got as far as they did in the legislative races, was because of COVID. They could hang COVID around Trump's neck, and they did. Joe Biden, if you recall, last summer was in the basement. He never came out. And when he did, he embarrassed himself. He got on a talk show run by a black guy by the name of Charlemagne the God. I actually tune in every now and then to Charlemagne, and he's not bad. But Joe Biden's on Charlemagne's show, and he says, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Now, the contrast between Charlemagne, who actually is a black man, and this ultra-white Joe Biden, and there's Biden smirking like that when he says that, was unbelievable, because Charlemagne was, for once, speechless. He was astounded.
But what you hear when you have a person like Joe Biden say that is the ultimate racist. That is some of the most racist comments that a person can make, and that's why Charlemagne was probably speechless. Is because how do you come back to that? How do you carve the edges off of that? You don't. Because that is fundamentally and profoundly racist. The Democrats, to me, are fundamentally and profoundly racist in almost everything that they do, and yet, they hang this white guilt and this whole notion of racism around your neck. I want to tell you, this is a sample of what is going on in this country. I walk Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I get out in my walker and I go and walk. And and I have somebody on the staff here, and this person is going to retire next Tuesday. Her husband just retired as a firefighter, a very successful up in the ranks of the fire department. They're a wonderful couple. They are sitting there, and she told me today, walking down a hall, out of the blue, totally unsolicited on my part, because she has no idea. She has no idea what my political leanings are. None. And she said, totally out of the blue, she said, I am so tired of being called a racist.
Oh, yeah, because it's not true.
Don't you think that this is the way most Americans, most white Americans are looking at the world, that they're tired of being called racist? And don't you think that's going to affect the way the polls are going to, if we can get fair elections, the way the polls are going to be in 2022?
Well, the only people saying that are Democrats who are part of the party machine. That's their mantra. That's their talking point over and over and over again. I said this yesterday. I listen to a lot of talk radio. Not surprisingly, I listen to a lot of black talk radio because I'm not black. I don't always see the world the way black people do.
That's correct. Yeah.
But I listen to Joe the Black Eagle. Joe the Black Eagle Madison, who I would recommend. He's an older man like you and I, Sam. But he has people on his show regularly, and they will say things like this. We have to keep the momentum going. We have to slam these white people all the time and call them racist, no matter what they say or do. And we have to keep hitting them racist, sexist, homophobia over and over and over again and never explain ourselves. Now that, ladies and I want to tell you where the idea that white people are responsible for all the pain and disappointment that black people have experienced. If there was ever any failure in the black community or ever any pain in the black community, it was white people's fault. And the originator of that idea was Louis Farrakhan. He was saying it back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Go check it out on YouTube. Farrakhan says that all the time. And by the way, there is a link between the Nation of Islam, which Farrakhan still heads, and Black Lives Matter. And by the way, the founder of Black Lives Matter is now almost as wealthy as Farrakhan.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think, that I became a political scientist because of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and I really did. I studied a lot of and take a look at the Black Panthers and the Nation of Islam and all of those variations that came about. That was all part of the 60s. But I think you're absolutely right. But it also, these fit right into Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. There is this isolation and then to turn on people. And I've said very often to people, Aaron Bildowski is the one that identifies the notion of victims, villains, and then vindication, and that means vindictiveness. So you have to attack the villains, but you have to have victims first, and then you identify a villain, and then you go after them. And that's where we are right now. And now the idea that is there a counterweight to this? Is there a way to do this? Yes, there is. And the way the counterweight to that is to, one, ignore it, or two, if you are of a mind, is to step into it. And what I mean by that is you've got to turn around and say, no, you're not going to call me racist anymore. That's it. You don't get that. You don't.
That's right.
Where's personal responsibility?
Where is it?
Where do you talk about? Let's talk about personal responsibility. Let's talk about fatherhood. Let's talk about motherhood. Let's talk about community. Let's talk about family. Let's talk about those notions that we really need to talk about out here. And let's talk about the inner city, and let's talk about schools and equal opportunity and go through that. And once you start down that road, they have nothing. They have nothing and to come back at anybody on.
They don't.
Because the evidence is not on their side. The facts are not on their side. And that's what people have to do, is present facts and be willing to step up and step into that.
Did you listen to my show Monday? Because that's exactly what I said. They have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. all the screaming and the meanness and the nastiness and all the threats. At the end, they don't have anything. I have a poster in my office. I've said this, or in the studio rather, of Malcolm X. And I like Malcolm X, even though we had nothing in common and I didn't see the world as he did. But he was a seeker of the truth. And like me, or me like him, he believed that God and the truth were the same thing. The ultimate truth came from God. If you were talking about truth, you must seek truth and you must seek God because they are the same thing. Now, here is the bitter and amazing irony. Malcolm X was kicked out of the Nation of Islam at the insistence of people like Louis Farrakhan, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he continued to seek the truth, and he was murdered by the Nation of Islam for seeking the truth.
His life changed when he went to Mecca, and where he saw Muslims of every color, of every stripe, of everything, and it came back to him that, okay, I don't have this right. And that changed his life. And that is one of the reasons when he came back, you hit the nail on the head. You have described it with finite accuracy there about his life. And I think that was, to me, was one of the inspirations for me as to become a political scientist, is because I felt that I wanted to get to the bottom of these things. And Martin Luther King and Malcolm X represented two parts of the story of America in my lifetime. And there were other parts, but those were two important parts, and they had great influence on me.
All right, our guest is Sam Clovis, and we're going to be back with Sam Clovis in about 8 minutes. Can you do that, Sam?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Sam Clovis will be back. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on.
Iowa City there. So it's the
Oh, that great big one out there.
yeah. They're the goodies. You're right. I did spend a lot of time in the South. I was stationed in Valdosta, Georgia, and I ran a business out of Montgomery, Alabama, and went to school in Montgomery back in the 70s, and of course went to the University of Alabama for my doctorate. But so I spent a fair amount of time down there, and and you're right. I tell you, the one thing when I first went to Montgomery, this was after I'd retired from the military. I went in. You had to declare right away: are you Auburn or Alabama? Number two is which NASCAR driver do you support?
There you go.
And number three, which church do you go to? And then those are the three things. And you better have a good answer for all three of them. So you better have a good one. And of course, I rode on the bandwagon. I was Alabama. I was a Jeff Gordon guy, and of course, I went to the Church of the Mind.
There you go. Well, I always had great answers for the first two, but the third one popped up, and I had to tell them I was a Catholic, and they kind of looked at me like I was Satan there for a while.
I am too. So there you go. So yeah,
they backed off a little while and just considered me a papist. I wasn't actually Satan. Just a papist.
It's just a papist. That's it. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Georgia, Stacey Abrams down there still hasn't conceded she lost the governor's race. So I don't want to hear how bad Trump is, as long as Stacey Abrams is. But let's talk about this: the Abrams refusal and the Trump refusal. Donald Trump knows damn well he lost the election, right?
I think yes, he knows he lost. Well, I think in his heart. He does not think it was fairly adjudicated in several states. That's what I think he thinks.
That's probably
the fact that he is not the president of the United States is very clear to him. The fact that whether or not the election was fairly adjudicated in several states, that is a question that many people have.
Well, all right, let's take that on. Let's say that's true, that in several states, or some, I wouldn't say several, but in some states, and this is hypothetical, let's say that the results weren't properly adjudicated, as you say. Let's say there was a miscount. I still don't think that scenario would have resulted in Donald Trump's victory. I do not. From the way I look at it.
I'm not so sure. I think if you Georgia, Arizona, I think Michigan, perhaps Pennsylvania, I think that you have enough question that and this is based on it's conjecture, Mike. Yes. I don't have the evidence. Nobody does really. I mean, nobody really knows. The issue is that on January 6th, Joe Biden was certified at the Electoral College as president of the United States. And as far as everybody ought to be concerned, that's it.
Right.
It's over. And if you don't like it, then do better the next time.
Well, there is a precedent. In 1960, John Kennedy ran against Richard Nixon.
Right.
And Kennedy ran and won. It was one of the closest races ever at the time. And
less than 100,000 votes.
And after the election, or really right after the election, it was discovered that in Richard Daley's Chicago and in Lyndon Johnson's Texas, dead people were voting. And there was a lot of other people that couldn't be accounted for. Nixon was urged to fight it out. He was urged to demand the election results be delayed until a further investigation. And Nixon, to his considerable credit, I was not necessarily a Nixon fan, but he had, to his considerable credit, he said, no, this would be bad for the country. This would hurt the country to have an open fight involving two states that are Democratic states. And it's just, I can't do it. It would hurt the country. Now, I wish President Trump would have said that he had doubts, but he can't fight it out because it would hurt the country. Richard Nick, and I'll tell you,
I think things are different now. I think that back then,
they are.
But back then we the connectivity. We did not have the ability. We didn't have electronic voting machines. We didn't have the mysterious appearance of 130,000 ballots and 4 states stopped the counting all at exactly the same time. We don't, and those are facts, Mike. Those aren't that. I'm not making that up. Those are facts. And so these are the things that give one pause. But things are totally different now than they were in 1960. And I was old enough to understand all of that, and I would agree with you. And even my parents, who were staunch Republicans, thought that Nixon did the right thing. Once everything was most people didn't know that there was a 9,000 vote difference in Illinois that would have flipped Illinois to Nixon. I mean, and if Nixon had won Illinois, he'd have won the presidency.
Right.
It was that close. And so and you're right. And there were dead people that voted in Chicago. So you have all of it, but it's totally different circumstances in my mind. And, I get where you're coming from, and I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to take issue with it.
No.
Because I do think that there are, I thought the election was suspect based on what I've been able to glean myself. But at the same time, January 6th, that was the certification of the election. If you didn't like it, move on. It's too bad. Move on.
Yeah,
That's
too bad.
The way I look at it.
Yes, grow up. You and I are reasonable men who are capable of carrying on an intelligent conversation. We don't feel a need to take off our fast food T-shirt and then get out in the streets and start screaming everybody's a racist or it's all white people's fault. I mean, this is I know I took this really in a different direction, but I would just like to point out that these mass protests, they're not like the anti-war protests in the 60s and early 70s. They were driven, or the intellectual classes were in the street. These people who are in the street now probably barely graduated from high school, if they did.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference. Now, there are some major universities on the East Coast, Brown and Georgetown, that are trying to involve the intellectual classes. And whether we like it or not, this is a class-based society. They haven't had much success. And you want to talk about a difference today. Young people are educated in a different way today. I mean,
totally.
Some would say there's indoctrination going on, but a lot of the young people are too sharp to be, if they're in major universities, they're too sharp to be indoctrinated. And they're suspicious of whom? Their beaded baby boomer professor, who they suspect might be a hippie.
Well, but no, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because, being a retired college professor myself, I can tell you that is exactly what a lot of the kids, normally the values that they got at home are typically the values that stick most of the time. Now, they do get some edges buffed off when they go to college, and they get polished up. Some of them get polished up pretty well, but others, they do take the dive off the deep end, and they're the ones that go back and tell their parents that if you don't do thus and so, you're not going to get to see the grandkids. I mean, that's how idiotic some of them are. And I had lunch today with a doctor and his wife, and they're wonderful people. And I've had a chance to get to know them. And I was sitting there talking to them, and I said, I cannot for the life of me get my head around how a progressive thinks. I cannot. I have tried everything I know how. Psychologically, everything I have tried. I've tried to immerse myself in their doctrine. I've tried to do everything, and I've tried to get myself to think that way, get my head around it. And Mike, I cannot. I cannot. It's just diverse. I just, there's something genetically in me that will not allow me to think that way. I don't know what it is, but I can't. So
Well,
I can think like a Russian, but I can't think like a progressive.
Well, Rush Limbaugh used to say that liberalism is a feelings-based philosophy, and he was right. He was right. They will get upset and insist everybody respect their feelings, and on and on and on. It's truly boring, but that's what happens.
Truly, yeah, truly.
If you're having a problem here, do what was suggested to me. Get a job.
Well, here's some goodies. Here's some goodies. Headache powder.
Here, I have the solution for you. If you're out in the street, get a damn job and go
get a job. Yeah. Well, what about and then you go back to the incentives that we have for not working now, and how many people do we need to get into the workforce because we have so many. There are jobs everywhere. I mean, there are jobs everywhere. And the one thing that we haven't, mentioned economically, and I don't want to head there if you don't want to, but it's the notion of inflation and how much that is devaluing the dollar that we have. It's already devalued because of the incredible quantitative easing that we've got going on. But at the same time, this inflation devalues our dollars even more. And we're going to see higher interest rates. We're going to start to see a lot of things to try to turn the torch down here. And when you tie joblessness with inflation, you have got a disaster on your hands.
Sure. Well, we'll see how Biden does. One of his first acts, of course, was to shut down the pipeline, and that threw many, many working people out of work. Of course, he considers them Trump voters, so he might as well slap them anyway. I mean, that's to an old Irish Catholic Democrat like me, the idea the Democratic Party would do this to working people is an outrage, and I'll never be able to forgive him ever. It's just terrible.
Well, I think, but that's one of the things that I've been trying to talk to some of my friends about is the notion of the changing coalitions that we see inside the parties. I think that you see by far the Republican Party has come around to be the party of the working man and woman, and I think that you see the left abandoning the blue and gray collar worker. You see that on the left, you see the ultra rich, and then you see their notion is that they must create a permanent underclass in this country, of which is dependent on government.
Right,
and that is their power base, is the fact that they create this. They don't want any of those people to be lifted up out of poverty. They don't want any of those people to climb the economic ladder. They cannot afford, the Democrats and the progressives can't afford that, because those people, if they do climb the economic ladder, then they're going to migrate to the Republican Party, because that's the party that is there to give them more money in their pockets, to give them a better life, to give their children better schools, to do all of those things rather than holding them down and suppressing them. They are trying to help lift them up. And I think that's the message the Republican Party needs to have and continue to have as it goes forward.
Well, that's exactly why the Republicans had to get rid of Liz Cheney. And Liz Cheney kept shooting her mouth off about Trump, and they just said, look, okay, you've had your say. Shut up, will you? But she wouldn't do it. She persisted like Elizabeth Warren, and she just kept it up and antagonized Trump. And Trump started to fight back, not surprisingly. And the Republicans knew if this came to a big angry public fight, that their hold on working class white people would diminish, and they can't have that. They can't. Trump brought the working class into the Republican Party. No, not
Yep.
because they're racist. No, not because they're privileged or entitled. Because the Democratic Party was trying, and especially during the Clinton years, was trying to destroy their way of life.
Well,
That's
I
exactly
think
why.
you see also that this is one of the reasons you see African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians migrating to the Republican Party as well, because as they climb the economic ladder, they find that there is nothing value in the Democrat Party, because all the Democrat Party talks about is raising taxes. And the idea is, why do I work so hard? Why do I work so hard for this money, to have a better life, than to have somebody turn around and want to take it away from me?
Exactly.
That's exactly what people think, and that is exactly what's going on.
I once heard
And-
Senator Dianne Feinstein smugly say that we had to have more illegal immigrants in the country because it's been proven, it's a fact, that white people won't do these jobs. I'll tell you
That's
what.
not true.
That's a lie.
That's not true.
That is a lie. Dianne Feinstein is nothing but a liar. And that's it.
That's not true at all, because the notion is that if you pay enough, people will work. It is a matter of what we call a reservation price. If you get the reservation price high enough, anybody will do that job. But it's the idea that what we have is strong lobbyists like the United States Chamber of Commerce that want cheap labor in this country,
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're willing to look the other way and allow illegal immigration to come in because it maximizes profit. What companies need to do is one, we need to shut down the border altogether and let nothing in except people who come here illegally, and then force companies to pay the wages that are necessary. And you're going to find people will work. They will work if you pay the right wages.
Well, it would be just like the Great Migration when all the black people moved from the South, where their lives were terrible, to Detroit.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'll move. I'll pick up my family and go to the stockyards of Chicago if it means I can support my family. And I will go to Detroit and make cars if it means I can have a better life. And they did. They did.
Well, you know what? They'll leave Detroit and they'll leave Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and New York, and they'll go to the places where the jobs are if the wages are high enough. That's exactly what they'll do, and we'll see that migration go on, and we're seeing it now. And over the next if you want to jimmy the census, and in the next census, I think you're going to see more hemorrhaging out of California and New York and Illinois, and places where people are simply tired of paying
Yeah.
those incredibly high taxes. And the only thing that I worry about is what we see like in Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, is people that do leave California, they take their politics with them. And that's the sad part to me, is that we can't make sure that when they come, they have to, we have to give them a re-education. They have to have if you're from California, you have to stay in California. That's what we ought to say. If you're from New York, you have to stay in New York, and or divide the country into three pieces. There you go.
Sam Clovis, it's always great to talk with you. I had a couple of people ask me if you're going to be on at this time this week, and so you're getting your following back pretty fast. So,
that's wonderful, Mike, and thanks for having me on. It's always a joy.
All right, Sam Clovis has been our guest. This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at JMike1400.
When the storm clouds build in central Iowa, we'll keep you informed with the Severe Weather Advisor on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD. We'll be here communicating with National Weather Service and local and state law enforcement so we can tell you where the storms are and what you need to do to stay out of harm's way. The Severe Weather Advisor is brought to you by Riley Armstrong Plumbing and Heating. Enjoy peace of mind that Riley Armstrong is here for you 24/7. Call 955-2232. Remember, when severe weather threatens, stay with your friends on the voice of Fort Dodge, AM 1400 KVFD.
Raising pigs in Iowa creates opportunity for young people and rural communities to build a positive future. While others may not share our passion for farming, we know Iowans share our values of hard work, love of family, and desire to be a good neighbor. By focusing on these values, we know we're helping Iowa be better for tomorrow. To learn more, go to iowapork.org.
Free up your time. With Steel, you can spend less time working on your yard and more time doing the things you love. Not sold at Lowe's or the Home Depot, Steel is only available through our 10,000 local Steel dealers. Real Steel. Find yours at steeldealers.com. Lowe's and the Home Depot are trademarks of their respective companies. Get big league performance in your backyard with Steel battery tools. From mowers to trimmers, our AK Homeowner Series starts at just $199.99. Steel is not sold at Lowe's or the Home Depot. Pick up at over 10,000 local dealers. Real Steel. Find yours at steeldealers.com. All prices MSRP. Available participating dealers. Lowe's and the Home Depot are trademarks of their respective companies.
The General Store has a simple way to save even more money. Introducing the Loyalty Program and your chance to earn points with every purchase at any One Vision retailer. Spend $10, earn 100 points. $15 gets you 150 points. Spend $25 and you'll get 250 points. Once you reach 1,000 points, you'll get 25% off your next transaction. Sign up today at the General Store, 12 North 25th, Fort Dodge. The Loyalty Program. It's perfect for loyal customers like you.
The day we've all been dreaming of is approaching, when life gets back to normal. But we're not there yet. So please, everybody, do your part. Get vaccinated against COVID-19 as soon as possible, because that's the best way to protect you. Protect them. Protect everybody. It's the best way to get Iowa back to normal. Find a COVID vaccine location near you at vaccinateiowa.gov.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. 75 degrees. Some rain will continue. Our high today will be 75. We're at today's high right now. And tomorrow, some showers. Mostly cloudy with a high of 77. Right now, again, it's 75 degrees.
From tuning an engine to replacing a fuse, you can learn it all under the hood. Heard every Saturday afternoon from 2 till 4 on the voice of Fort Dodge. AM 1400 KVFD.
The House preparing to vote on creating an independent commission to probe the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
This bill will come to the floor, and they will have the debate to see who wants to seek the truth or not.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejecting Republican criticism about the process, saying she could have called for House hearings, but chose not to. Still, the House Minority Leader and Senate Republican Leader Mitch McConnell called the current proposal biased and argued the commission should also probe other political violence in the U.S. Former President Trump is called a trap. Several Republicans mask rules on the House floor in line with new CDC guidance that vaccinated people don't need them in most places.
The Office of the Attending Physician is requiring face coverings for all staff in the House chamber. These coverings are not required elsewhere. Capitol Hill for fully vaccinated people. 3 Republicans were fined $500 for violating the mask policy yesterday. 8 others were given warnings.
Fox's Jared Halpern on the Hill. The Capitol attending physician just releasing a statement still standing by mask requirements, insisting extra precautions are needed in an interior space with a substantial number of people throughout the day who are unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, or who is not confirmed. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu isn't ruling out reoccupying the Gaza Strip despite Palestinian militants continues.
This Prime Minister responded to a fourth call from U.S. towards a ceasefire. That's what diplomatic, but also basically saying the Israelis continue their operation as they see fit.
Fox is saying Iraq.
Hey everybody, Jay Farner here, CEO of Rocket Mortgage and Rocket Companies. Last year, we saw historically low mortgage interest rates. In fact, over 1 million homeowners took advantage of refinancing or buying a new home with Rocket Mortgage. What you may not know is that interest rates are already starting to increase again, and it's likely that trend is only going to continue. Our team of experts is standing by to help you save before rates go up. With an official mortgage review from Rocket Mortgage, you'll see just how much money you could save by making a move right now. Don't look back over these next few weeks and wish that you had taken action. You could save hundreds on your mortgage payments or pay off your home loan earlier than planned. You could even take cash out of your home to pay off high interest debt, complete home repairs, or bulk up on an emergency fund. When you want to secure a low rate, Rocket can. Call 833-8ROCKET or visit rocketmortgage.com.
Rocket. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
In California, say they're more prepared for extreme heat, but still can't allow rolling blackouts.
They have more capacity this year to handle high demand megawatts, which includes battery storage of renewable energy that they can summer. But it's hot. Back into the grid after dark when solar goes offline. They also hope to have an additional 1,500 megawatts available by the summer. But the CEO of CalISO told state lawmakers this week it gets hotter every year, so there's still a risk of blackouts. On top of that, hydroelectric supply will be lower after a second year of below average precipitation.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. Rolling blackouts last August were the first in California in nearly 20 years. Arrest warrants issued in Colorado for 2 police officers over the rough arrest of a 73-year-old woman with dementia whose family says she suffered a dislocated shoulder. It happened last year, a lawsuit spurring independent investigations. A man who gave a lot of people a little
their head around. Am I making these
AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, this is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I am Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth, and of course, we have a fundraiser this weekend. Yeah, thank you, Rod.
AM 1400 KVFD.
All right, this is AM 1400. Where's KVFD, all that coming from? Get out of here now. Stop that. I just heard on air something I just said. I don't need that. But anyway, if you go to my Facebook page, it's at Michael Devine, and also the Alpha Media Fort Dodge webpage, you will see in the studio Rusty McNeil and his beautiful daughter Jackson. How are you over there, Jackson?
Good.
Is this the first time you've been on the radio?
Mm-hmm.
This is your radio debut. All right. So you get hooked on that microphone, it just stays with you forever, believe. Anyway, a smoke out for ALS is happening this Saturday. It's a smoke off fundraiser for Chuck Angstrom, who has, of course, ALS. That's coming up at the Webster County Fort Museum this Saturday. The gates will open at noon. There's a $25 fee, but I believe it's $20. I think I had Brenda Angstrom in here yesterday, and she's Chuck's wife, of course. And Brenda told me that some of these posters said $25, but it's actually $20. But hey, tasting starts at 2 o'clock. All family, friends, and community supporters of the Angstrom family are welcome to attend. Benefit to provide financial assistance for personal and medical expenses, along with love and support for the Angstrom family. Fort Dodge is a good town. I just went through that COVID business, as you know, and I know it was approved to me once again that Fort Dodge, when something like this happens to a family, and tragically it's happening to the Angstrom family right now, that the good people of Fort Dodge will come out in droves. So there are free will donations, a silent auction, live music, the whole thing. If you need to contact Sharisha Rash at 515-571-7793 if you have any questions. All right. I still got to get this audio camera straight, or this video camera straightened out. Just got to get it done here and see if I can get Rusty there. Well, okay, let's try that. Now, see, I got this arm in the wrong doggone place. But anyway, I asked Rusty and Jackson, and how old are you, Jackson?
9.
9 years old. You're a big girl now, aren't you? Jackson is going to be one of the competitors. You are going to be one of the smokers at this event this Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes.
What sort of meat do you smoke? Do you smoke pork or beef, chicken?
I really like to smoke pork
You bet.
and beef.
Pork and beef. Are you going to smoke both of those this weekend or not?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's terrific. Well, I'll come and see you. I will definitely come and see you. So, Rusty, where'd she learn her skill? Are you somebody that smokes meat? Or?
Yeah, I've been dabbling with smoked meat here and for probably about maybe 10 years or so. And one day she came out of the living room and said, Dad, come here. So we rushed in the living room to see a kids show that was a bunch of kids barbecuing. And she said, they're doing what you do. And I said, yeah. She said, they're kids. I said, yeah. She said, I want to do that. So I said, well, you know what? We'll go tomorrow and we'll get some meat and we'll teach you how to smoke.
All right.
So the next morning at 6:30 in the morning, she's waking me up wanting to go to the grocery store.
There you go. Absolutely.
And we did. We took her out there and showed her how to select her own ribs and her own beef. And we spent probably 3 or 4 months every weekend cooking, and this kid stood right there by my side doing every bit of it.
What kind of smoker do you use, Jackson or Rusty? Either one? Do you know?
A lot of times we use a big one.
Okay. Is it? Maybe. I'll ask your dad, and I'll come back. Does she use electrical or propane?
Well, we've got the pellet grill on the deck.
Pellet grill.
Yep. But most of the time we're out there using one of the old-fashioned stick burners, where you throw in the oak logs and the hickory logs and fire it up. But we've got a couple of them. She's got her own smoker that sits on the deck, and
she has her own smoker.
Yeah,
all right.
She has her own little smoker on the deck that she can get into real easy and does it. So
you can get into your own smoker just fine. Do you have to stand on a step or a block? No, it's you can reach it just fine. How long does it take to smoke meat, do you think?
Sometimes it takes up to 4 hours.
4 hours. Okay. Well, once you have it smoked, what do you do with it then?
We just cut it up and then either wrap it in tin foil and put it in the fridge,
Mm-hmm.
or we just eat.
You bet. The eating's the good part, right? The eating's the good part. Do you like pork or beef best?
Pork.
Pork. Yeah, well, your dad commented before we went on the air that he's been hearing a lot of pork on this station today, to which I reply, you betcha. We have a lot more hogs in Iowa than we do people. I think it's like a 10 or 12 to 1. Anyway.
And Greg Hora did not pay us to say that.
Yeah, I know that. So Jackson is our guest. And who are you named after, Jackson? Do you know? No, your folks just like the name. Okay. All right.
I tell everybody it's after Bo Jackson.
Bo Jackson. All right.
Say, but Mom doesn't agree.
I go back further. I thought it was Jackson Brown. But what do I know? Do you ever freeze your smoked meat, Jackson?
Sometimes when we get meat and then we can't cook it that day or something, or in the next few days, we would put it in the freezer and just cook it some other day.
Do you know Mr. and Mrs. Angstrom, or maybe that's an old way to put it? Do you know Chuck and Brenda Angstrom?
Mm-mm.
No, you're just going to go because it's an opportunity for you to smoke, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I should say smoke meat. Yeah. Again, this is a smoke off fundraiser for Chuck Angstrom, who has ALS, and that's no good. And the smoke off fundraiser is this Saturday at the Webster County Fair grounds, or Fort Museum, actually. Check that, Webster County Fort Museum. And that's Saturday, May 22nd. Gates open at noon, a $20 fee. Tasting starts at 2. All family, friends, and community supporters of the Angstrom family are welcome to attend. Have you been to one of these before, Jackson?
Yes.
How many?
Only one, because I couldn't go last year.
You couldn't go because of the COVID thing?
Mhm.
That COVID thing slowed everybody down.
Yeah.
It did, and that was no good, but that's the way it happens sometimes.
Her first competition was at the Rib Ruckus downtown a couple of years ago. And she did everything herself. I mean, she trimmed her own meat. She seasoned it. She did everything herself, and ended up taking 5th place in steaks and took 9th place in ribs
That's terrific.
for her first competition amongst 20 teams, I think it was. So
Wow, that's pretty good. Did you get a trophy?
No.
No, but you got did they give you a ribbon or something, or
I
they
got
just say thanks and kick you out, or what?
I got $75.
Wow. Well, that's better than the cup and the ribbon both. $75. What school do you go to, honey?
Butler Elementary.
Oh, is that a good school?
Mhm.
You bet. You bet. Who's your homeroom teacher?
Miss Newsom.
Miss Newsom. Do you like? Well, I better not ask you if you like her on the radio station. And you're in what? 2nd, 3rd grade?
3rd.
3rd grade. Okay. Well, this is pretty cool to meet you.
Tell them the name of your barbecue or your barbecue team.
My barbecue team is called Pumpkin Butt Barbecue.
Where'd that name come from?
My parents.
Your parents thought that up.
We
Okay.
always called her Little Pumpkin Butt. And it
Ah.
just kind of stuck. So
Well, all right. Do you sell pumpkin butt t-shirts? I see you're wearing one.
We got some last year, and me, my brother, my parents, and then my grandparents all have one. But then this year, we were thinking of maybe making hats or aprons.
By golly, there's an idea. There's an idea, you know. Caps always work for me, and maybe your dad too, because I don't have much hair left on the top of my head. Summertime, I can get a head burn. I know you understand that. I got that. I got that. Well, are you getting your meat ready for this Saturday?
Not yet, but I think we are gonna start getting it ready soon.
How long does it take? Does it take a day or two to get everything ready?
Maybe a day,
Okay.
because we have to get the meat and then find all of our tools.
Sure. Yeah. What kind of tools do you use?
I use a lot. Like I have a thermometer. Like I
Meat
have
thermometer.
a cooking set that I have a thermometer, spatula, knife, and then I have a some tongs.
Sure. And what kind of seasoning do you use, if you don't mind telling us your secret? It's good seasoning, isn't it? That's all we need to know. Jackson uses good seasoning. That's cool. That's very good. So Rusty, do you know how many competitors they got out there?
I want to say there was about maybe 20, I thought. It looked like there was a good group of folks, a lot of local folks, and it looks like there was some folks from out of the area that will be here too. I know that they do have a live band that's going to be playing from 1 to 4.
Yeah.
Was it cool? I'm losing the name of it right now. Offhand, but
Brenda told me yesterday. Of course, I'm old and I can't remember.
that's probably why I'm going.
Yeah. It's just what happened. But if you have questions on these sorts of things, again, it's Sharisha Rash, and you can reach her at 515-571-7793. Of course, competitors may enter free, and that's cool. That's as it should be, of course. Anyway, that's a fundraiser, smoke-off fundraiser for Chuck Angstrom. At the very least, there's going to be a lot of great food there.
Yes.
Do you make anything else, Jackson, like potatoes or?
Sometimes I help my parents cook dinner.
Well, your dad needs all the help he can get, doesn't he? She nods. I'm just kidding around.
Nope, that is definitely true.
No, that's right. But you do so because I like to grill. I don't do it at your level, but I'm getting a smoker this year, and I'll smoke potatoes because if you use the right amount of garlic powder and garlic salt and little parsley flakes, I mean, you can really make some good potatoes that go very, very well with smoked meat. I'll tell you. So your family eats a lot of smoked meat. Do you eat smoked meat every night or not?
A lot of times we would like with ribs and pork loin. We would just cook them on the grill all day and then eat them for supper. Lunch.
Oh, that's good, isn't it?
That's really good. That's really good.
I think her and her brother can pretty much put down a rack of ribs each.
Yeah. If you get a nice pork loin like that and put your grill on 200 or whatever, and let it sit there for a while, man, that's good. That's as tender and delicious as anything. Do you like any special sauce? I mean, barbecue sauce or not? Do you use sauce when you smoke?
I don't really put sauce
on
it.
Okay.
But sometimes I take them off the grill and then put barbecue sauce on and then wrap it in tin foil.
Oh,
then put it back on the grill.
You do know these things, don't you? You ever use onions? I use a lot of yellow onions when I grill.
We don't really use onions.
Okay. That's a matter of taste.
When we grill.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we grill, we put 2 different seasonings on one rack of ribs or one pork loin.
Do you use Dave's pork rub or anything like that, or you know the type of seasoning you use?
I don't quite know, but I think I just got some new rub.
Okay. All right.
We have a friend of ours, John Mulvihill, who has BBQ's barbecue sauce and seasonings and stuff, and he's got some great products. So we've been
What's the name of it? I'll try it.
It's BBQ's barbecue.
BBQ.
Yep. And I think he's got his own little Facebook page and all kinds of really cool stuff. And he's got some real cool flavor profiles that we've been kind of playing around with a little bit. And Got some good stuff.
That's great. That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
absolutely
So-
a great idea.
And it's local product.
That's
So,
the key to me. I use a little barbecue sauce. It's called Countryside, and that's made between Algona and Humboldt by a guy I went to high school with. And it's sweet, and if you like the sweet, tangy taste, not everybody does, but if you like that, Countryside is pretty good. And they sell it in all the big grocery stores, Hy-Vee and Fairway and all those places. But there's many others out there. I mean, there's Cookies Barbecue Sauce. Gosh, they've been doing a great job over there for years and years and years, and they have so many different flavors for crying out loud. Do you use cookies at all, or what sort of sauce do you like to use?
A lot of times we just like sometimes we just like use the whole bottle on some meat.
Sure, you got to. Absolutely, I understand completely. Absolutely. Well, Jackson, I wish you luck this weekend at the fundraiser for Chuck Engstrom. Again, Smoke Out ALS, please. Competition slots are available, and competitors are allowed in free. A Smoke Off fundraiser for Chuck Engstrom is at the Webster County Fort Museum. I keep saying fairgrounds. Forget that fairgrounds business. It's not at the fairgrounds. It's at the Fort Museum, and that's Saturday, the 22nd. Gates open at noon. Going to be a great day. The temperature should be in the 80s. There might be a little of the usual rain early in the morning, but for the rest of the day, it should be wonderful. The tasting starts at 2 in the afternoon. There's going to be a live band, and all family, friends, and community supporters of the Engstrom family are certainly welcome to attend. This is a benefit to provide financial assistance for personal and medical expenses, along with love and support for the Engstrom family, and they need that right now. I mean, I've gone through episodes like this in my life, and people in Fort Dodge come out of the woodwork and help me. I mean, it's very gratifying to know you live in a community that way, and I hope we can show that same kind of affection and love to the Engstrom family. I know they're pretty well known in our community, in our area. So, and again, if you have questions, contact Sharisha Rash at 515-571-7793. Justin Rash died. What did he die?
I think it was about a year ago. And
Yeah.
that was from ALS as well.
Was that
Yes.
My
yeah.
brother-in-law died of ALS.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those diseases that isn't fun, and it affects that person, but it affects the whole family.
Well, anytime. Oh, and sometimes people forget the family, what the
Yeah.
family's going through.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's great that the family's coming together and all these friends coming together for Chuck, and hopefully we can have a great day and raise a lot of funds and a lot of love and support for him and his family.
Yeah. The attention should be on the person who's ill, and I understand that, but let's not forget the family.
Right. Exactly.
They're going through hell too.
Yep.
It's just, just bad things happen in life, and we got to do the best we can to push back. I wish there was something else I could do besides say go to the fundraiser. But
Well, I tell you what, you getting the word out there and letting people know about this event is enormous, and I know they're very appreciative of all that. So thank you for that.
Well, certainly not a problem at all. And I haven't done enough of this as I should have in the past. So when I saw this going on, I jumped on it right away. If this is a local radio station, if I can't get on the air and say one of our people is in trouble and needs help, what the hell good is this radio station?
A good point. Very good point.
Anyway, I'm going to start to get potty mouth here. Just what I would need for Jackson to go home and start using my language. Or grandmother. Jackson, I'm so glad to meet you. Would you come back and talk on the air again?
Maybe.
Maybe. You didn't like it that much. That's okay. That's all right. But you can go home and see yourself on video like you are right over there. And I really want to say that you're a very smart and hardworking little girl, and it's been a great pleasure to meet you. All right? All right, Rusty, great to see you as always.
Good to see you again, Mike.
All right,
Thanks.
This is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
It's time to discover the difference between a good tractor and a great